So these are 4 plates hanging on a wall at Ullin, the West Cork Art Centre in Skibbereen, as part of the current open members exhibition running until July the 3rd this year, 2025. The work is titled Irish Broken English China. And there's a story behind it, not an epic one, but maybe of interest. A few months ago, following a visit by some family, whilst tidying up afterwards, a set of 4 plates got dropped onto the hard ground and were immediately broken into pieces, smashed, or 3 of them were at least. So this was a devastating enough experience for the owner of the plates. And even though they didn't have, it wasn't so much the monetary value, but the kind of sentimental and personal importance. The perpetrator of this obviously was also mortified at what had happened and the fact that the pleasant afternoon had ended in this negative way. So the first question was really whether possible replacements could be found by searching online. An interest of mine, in fact, artistically, let us say, and in terms of technology, is how supply chains, a very commonly used word these days, function with digital information and orders flowing in one direction and physical artifacts in the other. The digital network and more visible transportation networks are mirrors of each other in a sense, and the mechanism of packet switching, which is the basis for the internet, operates in one dimension, while real packages and packets and trucks and vehicles flow and move along roads, rail, and through the sky, and so on. So now almost anything you can dream up or imagine can be acquired. And I wondered whether it would be possible to engineer something new if the equivalents couldn't be found, or if proper replacements couldn't be found. There was a vague sense that some sort of restitution might be possible. In a rushed attempt to address the situation, the pieces were collected together and the plates rearranged, even with the cracks visible and some apple tart still visible on them, and photographs captured. Could the reassembled plates be reimagined somehow or rematerialized in another form? Via Google search, a plate printing service was located almost instantly, and within Ireland too. High-resolution imagery could be mapped onto fresh china, it seemed, and turned out. One sample plate was ordered to begin with, and that returned impressively quickly in the post within a few days. 2 more were then ordered before revealing the set to the original owner of the plates. Unfortunately, the gesture didn't have the desired effect, though. If anything, it may have made matters worse. The newly printed plate, though accurate in a certain way, only served to remind them of the original loss, re-traumatizing, so to speak. Nevertheless, the process had become interesting in its own right, and from an artistic point of view. The reprinted image had a strange uncanniness. Things were not perfectly lined up, shadows on the original pictures, confused surface and depth. The cracks and apple tart crumbs remained. There was an illusory quality, obviously, and this was photography after all. Instead of printing on the kinds of rectangular paper qualities that photography artists of a certain type like to salivate over, here the supports were circular with some depth in them. Even though a strong principle of interest of mine was not to make anything, but to appropriate, it was decided in this case to do some work on the original images. The saturation was increased and the tonal range expanded in order to heighten the visibility of the crumbs and the cracks and to create something more vivid. The Ullin Members Exhibition was coming up, and it seemed that would be a good place to check the results of these exercises. The cracks on the plates and other aspects of the work meant that it fitted well with the proposed theme for that show, which was angle. There were other connotations. The oranginess of the apple tart could be interpreted as a nod to the Japanese practice of kintsuko, where broken ceramics are reassembled using golden seams and binding agent. The underside of one original plate was also photographed and overlaid on the front of another to make a 4th plate, a complete set, so to speak. This revealed the brand, in this case Victoriana, which research showed was from one of the famous Stoke-on-Trent potteries, once a core of English industrial manufacture in the Midlands of Britain. The Stoke area was arguably broken too, in fact, by 1980s Thatcherite deindustrialisation and what some people call neoliberalism from that point onwards. There's also a surreal and uncanny quality to seeing the maker's mark staring out, but from the wrong side of the plate. The cost, €134.95 for 4 printed plates, promptly delivered. One constraint, another constraint that is, for the submissions to the open exhibition was that no work could be larger than 80 centimetres in its longest dimension. If these 4 plates were displayed in a straight horizontal line with 1 centimetre gap, say, between them, then the width would be 84.3 centimetres. So I did some calculations, created an algorithm, if you like, in Google Sheets, a spreadsheet. Let's call it let's call it an algorithm using school-level trigonometry, which allowed experimentation with different angles. In the end, 45 degrees was selected upon, but lesser or greater angles would also have meant that it fitted within the 80 centimetre limit. And I won't bore with that story, because I know some people have a problem with anything that mentions mathematics. So here too, the theme of angle was being addressed. On display, the work invited other readings. There were echoes of those flying duck ornaments, once ubiquitous as house decorations and maybe still existing in some households. One viewer mentioned a scene from the Disney movie Hannah Montana, in which plates crashed comically onto the floor. For others, there might have been parallels with repair, domesticity, illusion, photography, and failure, some of the subjects already touched upon as I'm talking here. The exhibition marked both the 10th anniversary of the Ullin building and the 50th anniversary of the West Cork Arts Centre. The 4 plates were mounted not inside the exhibition space with all the other works, but on an atrium wall of sorts, outside, so to speak, but still within the bounds of the West Cork Arts Centre, exposed to some degree to the elements. The decision, and that decision by the curator, was a wise one. It gave the piece attention, it kind of, and a hint of precariousness, which was something that was discussed in advance. Seeing the work on the wall was also a reminder, when it was present there, that 2 decades ago, during a fine art master's degree, similar themes of destruction and reassembly had been of interest to me. A concept I'd been working with was that things bounce back. Something can be fixed, though it will never be the same, and its history leaves a mark always. So the idea of the feedback loop, cybernetics principles, and so on were relevant to this. Collaborations with a professional clown, Dave Thompson, better known as the original Tinky Winky in Teletubbies, were carried out. He was directed to perform actions involving the deliberate breaking and partial repair of mugs and plates and ceramic objects. In one performance, he broke a mug with a hammer, reassembled it using glue, and then attempted to drink from the resulting holy object. That was made into a film and also a live event. Long before most people were aware of the possibility of what is now called photogrammetry, the ways in which objects can be scanned in and data extracted in order to work with them and do other kinds of work with them. I found at this time, during the master's degree in fine art, an American company, a US company, that was happy to carry out some experiments for me. I broke a mug, sent them the pieces. They mounted the resulting pieces onto cardboard using cling film and sent them back to me, but had also returned the data, which I was able to incorporate into 3D Studio Max, a 3D modeling and animation tool. I made one piece, for example, where the broken pieces could be expanded and contracted to form and cup. And the title for that work, that animation, was Cormac's Cup, which refers to an old Celtic myth of King Cormac and his truth-telling chalice, which shattered when he was being lied to and reassembled in the presence of truth. Another animation used lip-synced fragments of the mug. I found a face in the shape of the mug to deliver a joke, voiced thanks to a found recording by Winston Churchill about a joke about his own mortality, not his own morality. So this was back in 2005 and 2006, and the piece actually did cause some controversy. It was seen perhaps as a mockery of that untouchable character in the British context. And this was, as I say, before 2007-8, the global financial crisis, when all the artists suddenly started to become supposedly political. More tenuously, this process of breaking was connected with pieces using beakers, glasses, a routine that involved the breaking of eggs and then reassembling or attempting to reassemble the shells. The clown I mentioned, Dave Thompson, mainly performed this, but I began to act in the piece as well as time went on, and was sort of learning and stealing his skill set in a sense. As for Irish broken English china, unfortunately, within days of the work going up, it fell to the ground too. So the wind and rain really conspired to blow it off the ground, and it was smashed again. The remnants were temporarily removed while I ordered a new set, which would be installed more securely at a later stage. Unfortunately, timing was not on our side for a visit from the indomitable and erudite Uvieghara Heron President Michael D. Higgins. He passed through whilst the work was down. We'll have had more than enough stimulation, no doubt, looking at the remaining about 130 works in the members' exhibition. During the interlude, what remained, 4 ring shank nails, I'm calling them screws, embedded at 45-degree angles, formed a ghost work of their own. And the decision was made to name this piece Screw Work. The title has at least 3 interpretations. A quick textual description accompanied it, installed, while the real work underwent reinstallation and renovation, so to speak. This text and the one produced for the original piece, posted on Instagram and in other places, were scrambled through the large language model ChatGPT to introduce numerous spelling errors, but not to the point of obscuring the intended meaning of the writing. This appeared appropriate too, given the nature of the work. So, screw work is just 4 ring shank nails. This is what the text kind of alludes to, banged out at 45 degrees. They do not hold anything, or maybe they do. No labour involved. End of work as we know it. There's a kind of suspended arousal in each one, bare, tense, nipple-like, just sitting there waiting to be covered or touched or flagged up by the censorious algorithm. Contemporary debates around censorship, nudity, and the algorithmic policing of imagery seemed relevant. Scholars like Annabella Pollen, if you're familiar with her work, have referred to the ambiguities surrounding nudity and the cultural struggles around it. The Free the Nipple campaign, for example, comes to mind. At any rate, the piece Screw Work had smuggled itself into the show, an additional work in a 1 piece per artist exhibition. That was another rule that we broke, so to speak. And Irish broken English china is now thankfully reinstalled once again at the West Cork Arts Centre. And you can see it there, along with a range of other works by a whole load of people, until the 3rd of July 2025.